If you have your Bibles, turn with me to 1 Samuel, chapter 8. Now, I want to tell you, a good friend of mine, an elder at the Glenland Church of Christ, Glenland, Virginia, sent me an article by email. The article was called Reflection of a King. And when I read that, I emailed him back immediately and said, I think that'll preach. And so a lot, especially of my introduction and conclusion, will come from that article. But not all the message comes from that article. It's just the basis to get something started. So 1 Samuel chapter 8, beginning verse 1. And it came about when Samuel was old, and he appointed his sons judges over Israel. Now the name of his firstborn was Joel, and the name of his second was Abijah, and they were judging in Beersheba. And his sons, however, did not walk in his ways, but turned aside after dishonest gain, and took bribes and perverted justice. And then all the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah. And they said to him, Behold, you've grown old, and your sons do not walk in your ways. Now appoint a king for us to judge us like all the nations. So, the title of today's message is, We Want a King. We want a king. Now, for years God had been the provider, the protector, and the sovereign of Israel. God led them out of Egypt into the promised land, and they have lived there now for some time, and they have not had a king. But they're looking around at the other nations, and we want a king. We want a king made out of flesh and blood. And Samuel begged them, you don't want to do this. If you get a king, they're going to tax you, they're going to oppress you, they're going to force you into labor for their pleasure. You really don't want a king. They're going to take your sons off to war. You don't want that. But the people of Israel insisted we want a king. And in verse 19, says the people would not listen to Samuel. They said, no, we want to be like other nations. We want a king to rule us and lead us into battle. We want to be like everybody else. We want a king. Everyone else has one. We want one. But the real problem is found in verse 7. While Samuel's talking to the Lord, the Lord answered Samuel, do everything they want you to do. I am really the one they have rejected as their king. In a speech made in 1863, Abraham Lincoln said, we have been the recipients of the choicest bounties of heaven. We have been preserved these many years in peace and prosperity. We have grown in numbers, wealth, and power as no other nation has ever grown. But we have forgotten God. We have forgotten the gracious hand which preserved us in peace and multiplied and enriched and strengthened us, and we have vainly imagined in the deceitfulness of our hearts that all these blessings were produced by some superior wisdom and virtue of our own. Intoxicated with unbroken success, we have become too self-sufficient to feel the necessity of redeeming, preserving grace, too proud to pray to the God that made us. I wonder what Abraham Lincoln would say today. You know, you look around, and what he said for 1863 fits 2016, maybe even better than back then. Israel wanted a king, and the kings would eventually be their undoing. Now, you look at the kings, and you look at the people of Israel. The kings were basically a reflection of the people. Think about it. That's a phenomenon that has existed throughout history. Think about post-World War I Germany. They had taken a terrible defeat. They were simmering with anger over perceived slights on the world stage. And this pride gave a deep desire for nationalism and led to the rise of Adolf Hitler. But on the other hand, let's go back and look at a nation that was struggling in the 1700s. A nation that needed a leader. A nation that found a man full of humility and grace named George Washington. He had been shaped by the Great Awakening. And that awakening led an entire nation to repentance. Leaders do not define a nation. Leaders are a reflection of the nation. So, we find ourselves today scratching our head and saying, how did we get these candidates to be the choice for our next president? How on earth did we end up with this mess? The truth of the matter is simply, they are a reflection of what our nation has become. That's why we're in this mess. You know, you see a video that's released of a man who has no respect for women, whose speech is filled with obscenities and vulgarities, a man who does not see the beauty of God's creation in a daughter who reflects His image. But we need to see in Him ourselves. Now you may say, whoa, wow, that's not fair. Oh, really? How many Christians flock to the movies for a glimpse of 50 Shades of Grey? How many Christians DVR the vulgarity of the Games of Thrones? Take a look at TV commercials and find that everything from toothpaste to car insurance is sold on the backs and bodies of our sisters and our daughters. To stand on a perceived moral high ground and throw rocks at Donald Trump is laughable. He is a reflection of our society. But now let's go on the flip side. And more correctly, we've learned that Hillary Clinton is a liar and a cheat. She's a woman that will say anything and do anything to get ahead and feed her need for position and power. Welcome to the current definition of the American dream. The poor continue to suffer. The inner city is on fire with oppression and need. There are countless children who are locked in social services systems that are understaffed and undeserved. The church is in a position to change the narrative and the reality of the story. But we find Hillary Clinton is a reflection of us. Say and do anything, pad the pocket, and climb the next rung on the ladder. We're throwing parties while our city's burning. Well, if our leaders are a reflection of who we are, then what we need is not new leadership. What we need is a new people. We need a people that will renew their relationship with God and understand some very important facts. Fact number one, our citizenship is in heaven. Can we get Philippians 2:320 up there, please? Our citizenship is in heaven, and from it we await a Savior, the Lord Jesus Christ. B.W. Johnson in the People's New Testament said, "We are citizens of heaven itself, our country from which we are now absent and which we are seeking. Hence we ought to mind heavenly things." Now I want you to notice that verse, and I highlighted one word. Is. That's present tense. Our citizenship is in heaven as a Christian. So, in a sense, we have dual citizenship because we live here in the United States of America. We're proud to be Americans. But our citizenship is in heaven. We need to understand this. Paul was a proud Roman citizen. Paul knew how to use his Roman citizenship to protect himself. But Paul had an understanding because his first allegiance was to his home country, not Rome, not Judea, heaven. His first allegiance was to God. Christians need to come back to this realization. Our first allegiance is to our home country. And that's not the United States of America. It's to God. Heaven is our country. And we need to understand it's our country. And we need to make sure God has first place. So we got a country. If you're going to have a country, you have to have a ruler. So who's the ruler of this country called heaven? Well, we know. Matthew is the gospel that stresses the kingship of Jesus. In Matthew chapter 2 and verse 2, we find the wise men coming to Jerusalem, and their question is, where is he that has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star in the east, and we've come to worship him. Now Herod didn't like that idea very much. And Herod tried his best to put an end to Jesus, but he wasn't successful. Because Jesus was indeed born to be a king. At the triumphal entry, Matthew chapter 21, we find that Jesus is riding into Jerusalem on the back of a donkey. Now this was a symbol that the kings used to indicate times of peace. They would ride on the back of a donkey. Well, you wouldn't want to take a donkey into war. You'd want a horse for that. In times of peace, they rode donkeys. And Jesus comes in to Jerusalem on the back of a donkey. He's making a statement. I am the king. I'm the king of peace. And it was to fulfill the scriptures, because Matthew 21, it says, this took place to fulfill what was spoken by the prophet. Say to the daughter of Zion, behold, your king is coming to you, humble and mounted on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of the beast of birth. He comes into Jerusalem making the statement, I am king. Let's fast forward to early Friday morning sometime before the crucifixion. Jesus is before Pilate. And Pilate says to him in John 18, so you are a king. And Jesus answered, you say I'm a king. For this purpose I was born, and for this purpose I have come into the world, to bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice. Jesus wasn't denying what Pilate said. He was agreeing with Pilate. Yes, I'm the king. I'm the king of truth. And anyone who's concerned about truth, you listen to me. Then we find in Revelation chapter 19 and verse 16 these words. On his robe and on his thigh, he has a name written. King of kings and Lord of lords. So Jesus is king. Now understand something. A king rules in a monarchy, not a democracy. Okay? Or not a republic. And contrary to popular opinion, America is a republic, not a democracy. Okay? Now, do we have a choice? I mean, do we get an opportunity to vote and participate? Yes. There's some of that idea of democracy, but we live in a republic, not a democracy. That's important to understand. If we lived in a pure democracy, we wouldn't need the electoral college. The popular vote would determine who would be the president. So we live in a republic. But in the kingdom of heaven, we live in a monarchy. That means the king is sovereign. That means the king is the absolute ruler. That means the king makes all the decisions. That's important to understand. We have to submit to the king because this is a kingdom, a monarchy. But what kind of kingdom? You know, there are lots of different kinds of kings. When you look down through history, there have been some very terrible kings, there have been some very good kings. So what kind of kingdom is the kingdom of heaven? Well, it's interesting. Turn with me to Matthew chapter 13. Because Matthew chapter 13 is the chapter of kingdom parables. We want to understand the kingdom of Jesus. We need to understand Matthew chapter 13. All right? So turn there to Matthew chapter 13. And in there, we're not going to read all of these, but I want you to be there so that you can see. There are numerous parables. In verses 3 through 9 of Matthew chapter 13, there's the parable of the sower. We all know the story very well. The sower went out and sowed, and as he sowed his seed, some fell on the path, some fell on rocky ground, some fell in thorny soil, and some fell into good soil. Now, those that fell on the path that was hard, the birds came and ate it up. Those that were sown on the rocky ground, the plant sprung up, but when the sun came out and there was no place for root because of the rocks, the plant withered and died. In the thorny soil, the seeds came up, and so did the weeds. And the weeds, which are the concerns and cares of this life, choked it out. And those that fell on the good soil, why, they produced a crop, a bountiful crop. Now, let's understand something here. Seeds do not have a choice on which kind of soil they fall. When you scatter them, they fall. Some will fall in one of those kinds of soils. But think about this. We have a choice in which kind of soil we want to be. Do we want to be the hard soil, the rocky soil, the thorny soil? Do we want to be the good soil that will accept the word and let it produce fruit in us? That's the first kingdom parable. Now, to get to the second kingdom parable, you have to jump all the way down to verse 24. And when you jump down to verse 24, you find another story about a farmer who went out to sow seeds. And during the night, his enemy came and sowed among his seeds the weeds. Now, there's something important to understand about these weeds. The Greek helps us to define exactly what kind of weed it was that was sown. The wheat, or the seeds, were a kind of darnel. It looks like wheat, except for one thing. The grains are black. And there's something else we need to understand about the weeds. They were very poisonous, and if you ate them, they were dead. Now we know wheat is good. We use wheat for lots of things. You know, we use wheat to make bread. We use wheat to make lots of products. Wheat is something we need. But this darnel looked like wheat, and you really couldn't tell the difference until the grains had formed in the heads of the weeds. Then you could see they were different from the weeds. Folks, we need to understand something. Our enemy, the devil, is a great deceiver. And he offers something that looks very good until you take a good hard look at it and realize it'll kill you. It'll take your life eternally. And you don't want that to happen. But that's what he's trying to do. We don't want to follow an imitation. We don't want to follow a lookalike. We want to follow the real thing. And that real thing is Jesus. We need to understand that. We need to follow Jesus. Then you go to verses 31 and 32. There's a parable of the mustard seed. Smallest seed you can find. But Jesus said when it grows to a great tree. On top of that is the parable of the leaven. When the woman took a little bit of leaven and put it in the flour, and then that leaven or that yeast worked through the flour and leavened the whole batch of dough. Both of those parables talk about the kingdom. It starts small, but it grows. And it grows. And it grows. And the idea is it's supposed to spread through the entire world. Right? It starts in us small, but it should grow until we give our complete allegiance to Jesus and will serve Him only, and none of the things of this world. That yeast should push everything else out of the way, other than the desire to put Jesus first and to serve Him with our whole heart. All right, then we get a couple of more good parables. Because down in verses 44 through 46, we find the parable of the treasure, and we find the parable of the pearl of great price. Now, who has a nickel in their pocket this morning? I don't have one. Who has a nickel in their pocket? Anybody? Anybody have a nickel? Michelle, you got a nickel? Michelle's got a nickel. All right, Ken, hold that nickel up. Who wants to pay Kenneth $3 million for that nickel?
Going once, going
Anybody want to pay McKenna $3 million for that nickel? Well, do you know there was a man that bought a nickel for $3 million? His name was Ed Lee. And he paid $3 million for a nickel. Now that sounds like a very bad investment, you know. $3 million for a nickel? But Ed Lee knew something, because the nickel that he bought for $3 million was called the Miss Liberty nickel, and it was minted in 1913. Now, anybody that's old enough to remember those Miss Liberty nickels, you know, I wasn't around then. Maybe some coin collectors understand what I'm talking about. The Miss Liberty nickel was minted from 1883 to 1912. Now notice what I said? 1883 to 1912. The nickel Ed Lee bought was minted in 1913. It was an illegally printed nickel. There are 5 of them in the world. Ed Lee bought one for $3 million. And in a short time, he turned around and sold it for $4.15 million and was able to retire. He was wise. He found a great treasure. He paid a lot for it, but he paid off in the end. These two parables, the parable of the great treasure, the parable of the pearl of great price, they're both very similar. And the point is this: the treasure is Jesus, right? And we ought to be willing to give up everything to have Jesus as our treasure. No matter what it is, we just need to throw it all off and all away so that we can be part of the kingdom. Give up everything for Jesus. And then in verses 47 through 50, there's a parable of the fishing the nets. And in there were good fish and there were bad fish. And so they had to sort the fish. They put the good fish in one pile and they threw the bad fish out. The point is very simple. There are good people and bad people in this world. And in the end, there's going to be a judgment. God's going to separate Christians from everyone else. God's going to keep the Christians. And the rest will be thrown into hell. Now that's a very quick summary of the kingdom parables. But now I want you to look at verse 52. And I think we've got that up here. Verse 52. And he said to them, therefore every scribe who has been trained for the kingdom of heaven is like a master of a house who brings out of his treasure what is new and what is old. Now notice the highlighted word, trained. Trained. Keep that in thought for a minute, and I'll back up to the scribe. Usually when we hear the word scribe, we think about the scribes of the law of Moses. Okay, that's generally what you have Jesus use the word scribe. But because of the word trained that follows, I don't think he's talking about scribes of the law of Moses. I think he's talking about the very people he's talking to. He's talking to the apostles at this point. In this verse. Alright, so every scribe, that would be every Christian who has been trained. Now the word train means to instruct, to disciple, to be a student. See why I think the word scribe in front of Christians? Aren't we disciples? Aren't we supposed to be instructed in the Word? both Old and New Testament. And aren't we supposed to be able to take from that word and apply it to any situation that exists today? And find God's answer for the situations we find ourselves in? You know where to find the answers for America? In the Bible. When we return to the Bible, we return to God, then America can be great again. Well, we've got to get back to God's Word. We've got to get back to understanding where our citizenship is, who our King is, and what this kingdom is like. We need the truth of Jesus to make this world a better place. John 8:36, Jesus said, if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed. Now, Jesus was not a reflection of the people that he went to. Jesus was a reflection of the Father because he came from the home country, heaven. It took him to see the perfection of the kingdom of heaven. It took him to see the grace and truth of the Father. It took him for us to see the image of God. So to pledge allegiance to his kingdom is to find security and hope. To walk in his footsteps is to see the world set on fire with the hope of his promises. If we want the landscape of our country and our leadership to change, the formula is set before us. Look to Jesus. Find your hope in Jesus. Seek the kingdom of Jesus. But Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton are not the problem. They are a wake-up call. Christians need to wake up. We need to understand we've been too much like this. And it's time for us to remember 2 Chronicles 7:14. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face, then will I hear from heaven. I will forgive their sins. I will heal their land. A new president cannot save us. Only Jesus can save us. When you go to the polls to vote, vote for Jesus. Vote for Jesus. If you're here this morning and you haven't made your vote for Jesus, you haven't made your allegiance to Jesus, you can do that this morning as we stand and sing all